Okay, so this is what's happened with tuition dollars versus student service dollars since 1976. And in the last 5-8 years, you can see that the tuition's really taken off. Even before that, it was a very different climb from tuition and student services fees. So if you'd adjust for inflation, this line would actually, I'm sorry, this is actually adjusted for inflation, but it's a very flat climb in the amount of money that we have for programs that are not education-based. They are not directly part of the education process. So this just illustrates how efficient we need to be with our dollars, especially today. Okay? So what process does our student fee advisory committee on campus go through in order to make these recommendations, and how does this money get allocated? So as you can see, this is a circular process. But let me start with the fall. Okay? So the fall, for those of you that are not on the committee, you might have some interest in coming and being a part of the committee. The fall, we bring in new members. We start going out to visit our units, talk to them about allocations we've made in the past, what kind of needs they might foresee in the future, and how we can communicate between those two things. In the past, we've had our budget call go out in the spring. That's going to be moved back probably in the fall as the campus budget processes change. When we send out our budget call, invite units from across campus to send us proposals so that we can review these. And then they'll come in the spring and present, hey, this is the money that I'm asking for, this is what I needed. Look at me jump up and down, please give me some money. And then we'll spend some time actually deliberating on those proposals as a committee. What are our priorities? What do our friends and colleagues think that we need the most on this campus? We'll go through these deliberations. Sometimes in a couple of hours, sometimes it's multiple meetings in a couple of hours. But we'll come up with some sort of plan. We'll actually, the chair, the vice chair will sit down with the chancellor and lay out our priorities. This is how we'd like to see the allocations made. And the chancellor has the last word. She can sign off on it, or she can line item it, or she can make completely different allocations if she so chooses. To date, at UC Merced, the chancellor, this chancellor and the previous two chancellors have all agreed with SFAC 100% on how to allocate our student services. Okay? So the chancellor makes the allocation and then start the whole process over in the fall. So this is an ongoing process, which is why our student members have typically 3-year terms, or if you're looking at like me, you're on here for 5 years. So how we decide on how to allocate the student service fee dollars is we have to make sure that they're in line with UCOP, University of California Office of the President policies and guidelines. And those are based on our Council on Student Fees, which is the UC-wide committee of all the SFAC chairs. We come together and we make up standing policies, and then the Office of the President makes their guidelines based on those policies. So we make sure things are in line with those guidelines. Some of those guidelines are don't spend dollars on the library. You spend limited dollars on things like intercollegiate sports, disability services. So how these allocations are made have to follow some of these policies. And so this is actually verbiage taken directly from the document. I don't know if you want to read through all that right now. So these are just some of the examples on our campus that I looked at the beginning. I'll skip through that too. But I do invite you to stay connected. Visit our website, look for the application call that comes out in the fall, and apply to sit on that side. And if you don't have time to be a part of the committee, communicate with the members that are on this side. And send them emails, bug them, say, hey, why isn't there more money going into recreation and athletics, or why isn't there more money going into the career services? So communicate with us, because that's the best way that we can stay in touch with the student body. Excuse me. So with that, I'm going to end my presentation. I'm probably tired of talking. I know I'm trying to hear my voice. But really the idea here tonight is for you to interact with us, ask us questions, ask our unit directors questions about how they see the process or what you might want to know specifically about their units if you will. Okay? So I'm going to pass the buck to Jennifer and Lucas. We're going to take over.
Okay, I actually want to start with specific questions on the units. just so you guys can kind of get a feel of what kind of questions you can ask in particular. So, Elizabeth, I'll start with you. So what kind of programs or has SBAC been able to provide with the funding that we actually provided for your unit? So kind of we can explain.
Okay, programs that we wouldn't have without SFAC tutoring. And, you know, we're having well over 1,000 students go to tutoring every year. And so, along with tutoring, there's the success mentoring. There's probably people in here who have a mentor. I noticed we have little scholars in here, and I don't know if everyone knows what that is, but if you do know what it is, it's probably because it means a lot to you. Because that's for our highest need, highest risk students, helping them get through their transition early on. And it's a very high-touch, intimate program. That's why we need student money, because we have to go out of our way and go the extra mile for those students and build that community. I actually brought my card that tells everything we do, because I can't always remember. Academic advising in Bright Success Center, we do the undeclared, and so a lot of people are undeclared by choice, and a lot of people are undeclared because this is their only option short of being dismissed from UC Merced. They didn't cut it in their major or something went wrong. So again, without student fees to catch those students, we'd probably be losing them. And my first academic advisor who coordinates the area, she's state funded, but when I asked that we needed to expand those services to be able to support more students who are going through different kinds of experiences, that's when student fees came in. So again, it's everything we do seems from student fees seems to help students succeed and help them reach their goals, which is why we're here. So I already mentioned the mentoring. And those are the main things. We are also known for orientation, but I want to be very clear, every penny of that orientation money is paid for the orientation fees. People pay a fee to attend, and then all that food and all that stuff. But what I do want to say about tutoring, mentoring, even peer advising, which right there is nearly 100 students working for us, they're paid by student fees. And I just want to be very clear, you've paid your money out of your pocket to student fees. The money will go right back into pockets of students who are implementing those. So they kind of multiply in their value, those dollars, because they go in as your money, they come out as the students succeeding and moving on, plus a payroll for student leaders who are serving them. So it kind of circulates. And just this year, we're finding that we're just launching so many careers in student affairs because the students are feeling the gratification of this kind of work. So it's really, I mean, you talk about it as a circle, it circulates in a way that's really spiraling outward and up. So it's been great. And I do really also just want to mention, I thank the SFAC because I know they have to work a lot, and again, they're very thoughtful and they really do weigh these issues, and I'm just very appreciative that you exist.
Do you guys have any other questions specifically for the Bright Success Center?
So Todd, you're from IT. I would like to ask, you provided some of the funding for you this year. What kind of like your plans that you are planning for next year? Or what kind of programs do you also offer in IT right now?
So the two things that we've come to Student Fee Advisory Committee for are I know Brian I think talked about how as a campus we're funded much for the academic and the instructional support, and we do have some money to run our programs and to keep our computer labs running and our help desk running to focus on the instructional support side. But what we're finding is that we're being stretched on the instructional support side. So what we've looked at is the difficulty that we'll run into is providing the student services. So we've gone and said there are student services fees available, and so we provide a wide breadth of services to students. But the two programs that we're really proposing for this year, we've asked for student staffing. So again, sort of similar to Elizabeth, the money that we would be getting would be going right back into students' pockets, basically through student salaries. So we've asked for, one of the requests is for the open access computer lab. So if you don't know about it, it's in Social Sciences and Management 152. It is open pretty much all day long, 8 a.m. to midnight, Monday through Thursday, 8 to 6 on Friday, 12 to 6 on Saturday, 12 to 10 Sunday, so many hours. It provides a space for students to go and complete their coursework, to communicate with their instructors, and it has all the extra software that are used in the other classrooms, in the computer classrooms. So some of the software would cost hundreds of dollars, just for a single semester. It's right there available. So that room, we never have classes scheduled in it. And so it's always available to students. It's meant for students. But the thing is that we want to have it secure. We want to have somebody there to help. We want to make sure somebody's available to fix the computers, fill the printers, things like that. So the money, we're asking for $24,000 to provide at least 66 hours worth of open hours in that room. Now, like I said, we are provided with some central funds, so we augment that, right? We're already providing some open access hours both there and in the collegiate library computer labs when there aren't classes in session. So we're still going to run, even though I'm only asking for 66 hours, that kind of gets you the core hours that most students are here during the day, kind of 8 to 10, Monday through Thursday, 8 to 4 on Friday. So we're still going to run the long hours till midnight on the weekends, but this just helps us solidify and guarantee that we're going to have that room open for students and those resources available. So that one's actually been funded in past years through ASUCM. It's something that the senators have voted on for the past 4 to 5 years as students, and they felt that it was a very important service, kind of to support academics for the students. And so basically the past 4 or 5 years, they've been providing $20,000 to $22,000 out of their Senate budget to provide the service to the students. So now that IT now has access to the student services fees, we think it's a better place, and ASUCM feels like it's a better place to have solid funding that's year after year after year, that the senators don't have to vote on and don't have to use kind of their Senate money. So I think it's a well-supported thing. We've had it running. It's just been funded in different ways, so that's what we're seeking. The second one that we're seeking is the IT help desk. So that's in the classroom and office building, room number 132A. So it's just right beside the doors, just past the auditorium. We run that service 8 o'clock to 5 o'clock. Just this year, as of March, I think we had already helped, or we completed over 4,600 work order tickets for students. We had seen 2,500 students, individual, unique students, already this year. We still have a few months to go. So it's definitely a highly utilized service. It's another one of those that as we get stretched, we kind of have to look where we put the money. So what we're seeing though is that we're exceeding kind of what we can do with one person there, and what we'd like to do is make sure that, again, it's a service that is here for students and always available. We don't charge students. We help them install software. We help them install the printer clients, the VPN, virus software, and mostly what we see is people who have problems with their computers, malware, viruses, things that have damaged their computers to the point that they can't get their coursework done. So they come to us with a little stress. We try to help them out. We run the scans and clean up their computers. It's a big thing that we do. The other thing that we do is on move-in day, very first when students get here, is we make sure that they're all kind of settled and set with our services. We configure their systems for them. And we're right down here in housing for 2 days, something like 92 total work hours with our students working down here. And so we kind of devote that right up front to make sure that we get as many people as possible on the network and ready to go before the semester starts. So anyway, so all of that would be included. If we get that money, we're actually going to then put some of our money back in and add a second employee working at the help desk during the middle of the day. So when we see those peaks and we see a lot of people coming in kind of between 10 and 4, we're going to add a second person in so that we can actually service more computers. So it's often at times we get 6 or 8 computers being worked on in the back, running scans and doing things. And that person has to be kind of engaged to be able to fix your computers, and then there's nobody out front to help you guys with the quick ones or just to bring in the next computers. So we've actually gotten to the point where we almost have to turn people away at a certain department during the day. And so again, this would actually allow us to expand the service, but also ensure that the base level service is provided without a concern for the future. So that's our 2 services that we're asking for money for. We certainly run wireless and we provide antivirus software. We do a lot of other things for the students, but those are the 2 that we're asking for.
So my next question is for Stephen. OSL provides a lot of programs for our students on campus. So I guess my question would be, what are some of the most significant programs you were able to provide the students with SFAC money? and maybe talk a little more about the amphitheater, because that's like one of our newest, and we had our biggest event in Ohana just this weekend. That was really great.
Yeah, so when we talk about student services fees going towards departments and functions that do outside the classroom work, that is the definition of the Office of Student Life. So we are heavily funded from the SBAC fees, so thank you all for the money provided to us over the years. And so a lot of the programs and activities that we do draw from that fund. One of the biggest things is that we have a large contingent of student interns. And so last year, SBAC funded some more of our student interns. We have 22, 23 student staff members who work in the Office of Student Life and put on a vast majority of the programs that we do, or at least help us do that. One of the big things that was funded last year, which isn't programmatic, but it has impacted every student that does a program or is in a club on campus, is our new Cat Life system. I don't know, has anybody seen use Cat Life? Show of hands, a couple people. So last year, SBAC funded Cat Life entirely. And so that program allows for us to put all of your club events online, all of your memberships online, and that way you can get connected to everything that the student organizations do on campus. And it also allows for us to manage a lot of your funding processes. So you get your own club money, and you get money from the associated students. You can see all of that on Cat and do kind of real-time work, which we think is a really great way. And then we have a flyer that shows you everything that goes on campus. One of the more prevalent programs that we have through our office now is our project, Merced County Project 10%. And last year, SBAC provided funding to leadership programs and civic leadership to help with some of those programs. And a lot of that was devoted towards civic leadership and growing some of the programs that Burnett Dottie, our associate director, does. And so Merced County Project 10%'s goal is to go out and raise the high school graduation rate by 10% over 10 years, I think is the goal. And that's what, 5 years? There you go, 5 years, 10 years. I was trying to be clever with the 10. So that's one of the programs that is helped dramatically from SBAC. Our club and organization programs are funded through associated students, if not by the students' own money. We also do our large club welcome week events and things like that that are assisted by the university as well. To talk about the amphitheater, so some of you came a lot of you probably came to Ohana's Luau, that was on Sunday. That was our first real campus event in that space, and so OSL has taken over management of the amphitheater, which is going to be a reservable space for all clubs and organizations on campus, departments on campus, and off-campus partnerships that want to come and do weddings and stuff. So if you were down there, it's a really, really nice space to have a wedding. If any of you are thinking about having a wedding in the future, you should come use the amphitheater. And so that space takes a lot of management, right? There's tons of grass. There's electrical that needs to be run and managed. There's equipment that needs to be purchased. There is there's a whole cement stage that needs to be kept clean. And so we requested funding from SBAC as well to manage that space a little bit better. So what we've learned is carrying equipment to and from our office down to anywhere on campus is quite difficult. And so we've asked for help funding a golf cart so that we can drive things back and forth from our office and down to SBAC. We've asked for money to manage power washing and buying equipment and lights and things like that so that we can make it a space that you all want to see. We plan not to charge, or we're not going to charge student organizations or campus departments for the use of that space. And so SBAC's help with managing it is going to keep that space free for everybody that works and functions on campus. We plan to charge off-campus partners. We haven't figured out how to do that, but that income will help continue to grow that space. Maybe put a shed down there so we keep some of our equipment in place. And so those are some of the pieces of the amphitheater. And then some of our, if not all of our professional staff members are funded in part with SBAC money. We've asked for positions this year to backfill some of the positions in our office that were funded, or maybe we're not sure, were funded by the associate students. But ASUCM is getting their own office space and are probably going to hire staff to work there. OSL needs to help fund those people. And so we don't know about OSL, we have 9 functional areas in our office that range from fraternity and sorority life, clubs and organizations, student events and activities, which has Welcome Week, January Jumpstart, women's programs, civic leadership programs. So if anybody's been to our leadership conference, that's one of our large events, among other things like judicial affairs and social justice and cultural programs. So lots of student events and activities that POSA puts on with the help of funding from SFAC.
Does anybody else have any questions pertaining to any of our units? So I'm going to pass on to Kristen.
Hi, everybody. So one thing I just wanted to talk about is we were not necessarily elected to this committee. We applied for it, we were interviewed and selected to be a part of it, and we're supposed to represent the entire, well, I personally represent the undergraduate population, and we're supposed to represent the interests of the student fees on campus, and that can actually be really difficult. For example, I don't go to the gym as much as I should. I don't. I'm lucky if I go in there once a week. But when the rec center requests for, equipment replaced, I have to think to myself, just because I don't run on those treadmills, a lot of students do. There's a constant struggle of having my own interest in what I'd like to see the student fees go towards, and what's best for the general population at UC Merced and your students and the fees you pay. So it's a struggle, and if you're interested in joining the committee, it's something that you might lose some sleep over. But it's a very interesting and rewarding experience to get to see your fees go to use and then visit the unit the next year and see the effect it's had on campus. And it's completely rewarding and worth it.
So, you're saying that you represent the undergrad population. So, how can I, as a student, help with student fees without being part of the team?
That's a good question. So, how you can help this committee without actually being on this committee? Am I paraphrasing that right? The best thing you can do is to complain to us. I love hearing complaints about things on campus and then taking those student concerns and actually making a real effective change on campus. And we also have a website, and I believe we also have an email. You can email us. But really, just voice your concerns. You're paying this money. You should go to what you want it to go to. And that's the best advice I can give you.
You can come to our meetings. So if you really want to see what happens, the meetings are open. With the exception of a couple of meetings, the meetings are open.
So yeah, going off the bat, you guys are all welcome to sit in our most of our meetings and just kind of see how the process and the conversations we have to make sure that we are doing the right thing for the unit and stuff like that. So you guys can definitely come and sit down. Do you guys have any other questions?
I was just wondering, how large is your committee? You said that you struggled to be representative of the entire student body, which I'm sure is a challenge because we have a large student body population. So I was wondering, what are some of the ways that SFAC markets itself and makes sure that they engage with students to adequately represent them?
So the voting members in the committee includes 6 undergraduates, 2 graduates, 1 ASUC representative, 1 GSA representative, a couple of staff representatives as well. On top of that, we have student alternates. So we had 4 undergraduate student alternates this year. And they come to all the meetings. They vote when we want to vote, members can't be there. But they're always welcome to provide their input in the meeting. And we're going to ask Kristen to answer the marketing question.
So for marketing, what we've done in the past is just blast the campus with flyers and handouts to get people interested, or just through networking. I know I'm here thanks to Brenda. She came up to me one day and just said, "You would be good for this." But one thing we take into account is that everyone has their own biases. It's completely natural for humans to have biases, and I want to get my way, and we take them into account when we have people on the committee. For example, George is on Veterans Affairs and works in that office, and it'd be kind of weird if all of us were in that office, but because he's only one, it's not weird. But we want to be as representative as possible, and it is a struggle. For example, I was just saying earlier, wow, we need more natural science people to sit on this committee. They need to have their voices heard. So if you're interested in joining, this is like half town hall, half publicity for next year, I guess. That's what it's turning into.
Hello. So, thank you for putting this together, first off. So, I have a quick question about, in regards to the relationship with the ACCM. I know we have somebody who sits as a representative, but I've never really seen them go to the Senate meetings to kind of tell us what's going on in SPAC. How do you think that relationship could be stronger? As you said you're a representative of the undergraduates, but you go through an application process, and then you have people who are directly elected by the undergraduate body. How do we communicate those differences on what you guys believe is best and what the ACCM believes is best? Other than having a representative on there, just how can the relationship work better in terms of cooperation and understanding different student issues and different ideas for student fees about where ACCM believes student fees should go to, where SPAC should believe student fees to go to, even though it's directly in the name Student Fee Advisory Council.
So we currently do have a representative from ACCM. Normally in the past years we do have our treasurer of ACCM sitting with us. And I think every year's not perfect, but definitely we all in SPAC do want to have that connection and communication better with ACCM. And we are currently working on kind of how we can improve it. So of course we would like your feedback on how we can kind of mend those bridges with ACCM, because we really want your feedback. And there's sometimes when we do have questions pertaining to ACCM and how they're doing their fundings, and sometimes we have to go out of our way to get those questions answered. But we're open. Our meetings are open to having ACCM join and sit in our meetings. I guess something we can improve on for next year is having the treasurer back from ACCM, and then being more open to our meetings, like actually telling everybody, the students, to come to our meetings when we have them during the once a week that we do, and we can communicate more with ACCM. So thank you for that question.
One thing I'd just like to mention is that Jordan and I were talking earlier about how ACCM tables in front of Office of Student Life, and I was like, next year, that'd be a good idea to have SPAC office hours or an office table 3 or 4 hours a week. Maybe we could even set up our table right next to yours and really get the feeling of the undergraduate population on campus and understand what's going on.
Thank you.
So as Jennifer mentioned, in years past, the ACCM treasurer has been kind of a de facto member of SPAC from the ACCM. And that's worked really well in the past. Like I said, this is my 5th year on SPAC, and so my first year was 2007, 2008. I know that seems like a long time ago. I guess we're 15 years. But every year until this year, we had really good communication between the ACCM and SPAC. The treasurer would come in, they'd have a very good pulse on what was happening within the ACCM. They'd be able to report back to the ACCM what was going on in SPAC. Last year, we had some proposals from units that they had applied with the same money from both organizations, and we were able to communicate through that. This year, that kind of broke down. The ACCM appointed somebody who is not part of ACCM as an ACCM representative at SPAC. And so we don't have any control on how they go back to the ACCM and report. So that kind of line of communication broke down this year. And it's been the same for GSA. So the Graduate Student Association has always provided their treasurer as the SPAC representative, except for the last 2 years. And the only reason they did it the last 2 years is because the last 2 years the GSA president or treasurer was my wife. So it's a conflict of interest there, so they provided that also.
Thank you.
More questions?
Don't go back to the list if you don't. So asking that I talk a little bit more about, if I move away, is it better? Is it worse? Less fuzzy here? Okay, this is good. Some of the other units that are being funded, as a graduate student, I utilize graduate student services quite a bit. And until 2008, 2009, there was no graduate student services at all. So there was really no focus on providing any aspect of graduate student life except for go do research or go instruct. And then there was actually some momentum to provide some services for graduate students. So since that's come online, there have been more activities for graduate students to get together and mingle and meet students that are not in the lab. And actually have this thing they used to have back in college called social life every once in a while. And so that's been really beneficial for the grad student population on campus. We're only 5% of the students on campus. And most UC's grad students are somewhere between 10 and 20. So we're often forgotten about. So I appreciate graduate student service and go on that. Additionally, career services has come really blown up in the last few years. Brian and Bruce know a lot more that SFAC has provided. So they've hired a STEM coordinator, a SHA coordinator, a graduate professional student coordinator. Where they're actually actively bringing in industry representatives from outside and trying to connect them with the students on campus who want to provide jobs so that they're employed when they graduate. What else am I missing? Health services. Yes, question.
Language.
Go ahead.
So, as you're bringing up grad services and stuff, and some of the undergrad services that we have in terms of things that come from ACCM are like the law clinic, prodigy, and certain other, I guess, you can say subunits that are different parts of ACCM. And I know on other campuses, such as UC Davis, there's actually an initiative to fund the Aggie, which is their school newspaper, but unfortunately in the past, right now that's rely on volunteers to write for the Aggie. So, that's a 190-year-old paper, I believe, 160 somewhere around that. It's a really old paper from what I understand. And so, I guess my question is, in the next 5 or 10 years, can you see SFAC, such as I'm pretty sure it has to go through the same processes over there to be a student initiative on the ballot, it has to go through SFAC. Can you see, I guess, SFAC going through the discussion of maybe taking on undergraduate services like law clinic to get their funding and the prodigy, which is the school newspaper, within not say the next 2 or 3 years, but maybe the next 15, or so years, to take that off of kind of ACCM and let them get their own funding so they're not very reliant, they're not very dependent of ACCM.
Okay, so let me preface this with this year we have requests for twice as much money as we had to allocate. So that's just to keep in mind. And then when we follow up with another question, are you talking about student service fee funding that or campus-based fees funding that?
Student service fee funding.
Okay. That's a question for the students on in all honesty. I'm planning to not be on this fact anymore. But that's something that can come up. We'll go through the same process. That's the priority that the student body wants to focus their student fees on, and that's fine. And my only point is that we already have double the requests that we can fund, because it's already competitive. So there's just a competitive nature in it. And you're competing with like health services having enough health providers on campus so a student can get in and be seen when they're sick. That may or may not be a tough sell. Does that answer your question? It's a really good way of saying it.
Also, if you're talking in the next 15 years or even the next 5, or it could be very fast, there's this whole other world of funding, which is our donors and our gifts and outside grants from the government. And I would say I'm almost half and half now with the stuff I have funded through student fees. I have other staff funded from money I got, either from a donor, such as Mr. Calvin Wright, or his daughter Carol, or the U.S. Department of Ed, because I have a grant from them right now. I've had 2 other ones that have come and gone. And so all it takes is one, and sometimes a donor does come along and all they would like to do is endow a student newspaper. And there you go. It'll be taken care of forever, and that way student fees can turn to other things. And I think a good example is the DARTS program, degree attainment for returning and transfer students. I haven't had to ask student fees for any money for a special support program for transfer students, because I was able to get that from the government. However, government funds you cannot spend on food, and you cannot spend them on, for example, a bus for a group to go on a trip. So I need my carry forward money just to cover, just to make my other money possible. But we're all under pressure at all times to be finding whatever money we can. So that's just one more way we multiply your dollars. We don't drain them, we try to perpetuate them.
I think we're really grateful of all of our units. They do a really good job at finding grants and finding funding outside of their student fees, and they do an amazing job. Elizabeth is just one of those units that does that, and actually provides a lot of that funding. And SFAC kind of comes along to kind of continue those programs and support them. So if you guys actually, like you mentioned, like the library, the newspaper and stuff, go to other units, talk to their administrator and say, you know what, I want this to be enforced on our campus. How can I go about, or how can, grants be looked into? How can SFAC provide that? So kind of like definitely ask other questions and all the unit directors.
I'll just follow on one more thing. So this, one of the criteria that we looked at when we're making allocation recommendations is how do we get the most impact for our dollar? So we start looking at things very specifically, like the student newspaper or the pre-law society. We start looking at very specific group of students that may or may not be the highest impact for the dollar that we have with the proposals at that time. More questions? Yes, please.
So forgive my ignorance, but I was just curious, since you're working with such a limited budget, I was wondering who would make the decision to raise student services fees, and is that even the discussion at this point?
That's a policy basically decided by the regents of the University of California. Currently, that's not a discussion. So per Prop 40 agreement with the governor about a year and a half ago, no increase in student fees for, I think it was a 3-year window. So there's no discussion on how to raise student services fees. And that's going to be a UC-wide policy that's going to be applied.
One thing we also think about is, you have a lot of campus-based fees that are not included in this funding, and so students can decide to put fees on themselves at each individual campus. And yes, this fees have to be approved by the chancellor of the campus and the system, and so that sort of falls in line with the no new increases over the next few years. But just last year, the students on this campus voted to create a new fee for the campus activities board at $35 a semester in the fall and spring, giving them a budget of close to $300,000 for events like the concert that was 2 weeks ago. And so students will decide that they want to put fees on themselves and say, this is important to us and we want to create those fees. And so there is a process and a method to doing that, to put it on the student government ballot so all the students on campus can vote for or against. It's very likely that eventually, well, it's definite that we will eventually have a student union on this campus. When that will come is the question, but it will take a student fee referendum. That will be a student union fee that the students agree upon, and that will cover a lot of the stuff that goes on in the union and part of the building of the student union. And so you all will think about that down the line to help back some of the student services fee specific and the student government fees. At the start of your campus, your fee for ASUCM went from $15 to $30 to $68 approximately, and you can vote to increase that as well, which creates new programs for clubs and organizations on campus. So there's a variety of ways for you to get funding for your own
this plot is, well, I put it together, it's based on a plot created by Michael Young, who's the Vice Chancellor of Student Affairs, UC Santa Barbara. So the Vice Chancellors of Student Affairs would all like to see more student services fee money. They like to show people that, hey, look, our budget's proportionally not the same as anybody else. So this is just an example of the process. So the UCSB undergraduate president proposed it to the Council on Student Fees, which, if you recall, is the UC-wide committee of all the SBAC chairs, that they support an increase in the student services fees. So UC-wide, the chairs came together and said, well, the governor's agreed not to cut if we don't raise fees. And so if we're asking to raise our fees at this time, that kind of sends a bad message. So that would be the process. It would be something proposed by the Student Affairs Vice Chancellor's Committee, or something from the students that they really, really wanted. But this is not a good window for doing that because of the agreement not to raise fees. I'm kind of tired of these going up in general.
So I'm just going to ask that real quick in regards to those, how much usage I guess in student services fee. You get a little bit over $5 million, but we have to cover a base budget first, and then so the leftover money that we have leftover that we spend on various units, that's the money that we allocate for the next year. So it changes, it varies year to year, and again this year we had a certain amount of dollars, and we had twice the amount of proposals. So.
Any questions? So another question I was asked by another student, it pertains to what we're discussing. How do you know how much money to allocate to each unit or program? So we can actually go discuss a little bit more on how that process happens.
I guess I'll start this. Well, my way of thinking about this is in a situation that we have this year where we have twice as much requests for funding as opposed to how much we actually do have in the piggy bank. I always have to think what is most critical, what are the most critical requests, and then two, how to get the most bang for your buck. So if there are ways for units on campus to share, for example, an administrative assistant, we'd like to do that, have them trained to work in 2 offices, wear 2 hats. You can get a lot of money and a lot of work out of those people. And I always just have to think in the long run. You know, I have a younger brother who, actually he'd be lucky to get into school, but I had to think, when he's an undergraduate 5 years from now, what is he going to want? What do future students want? What does everybody want? And what is most critical at the end of the day? For example, CAPS, Counseling and Psychological Services, we do not want you to have a wait list in order to see a psychologist. If you need help, there's not much access to the community in terms of that type of help. And it's incredibly important and critical that we can offer those types of services to our undergraduate members or students. So that's my process for deciding how to vote or how to allocate funds, is what's most critical, what's going to be the most effect, and how can I make a good decision. And 5 years from now, people are going to be like, what was SBAC thinking? Why did they spend that money? So that's always a fear I go through.
To add to that, something that we also look at is to kind of maintain the services we already provide and not cut them. If we necessarily don't have enough money to increase them, at least to keep them at the level we have right now, which is very important to, keep at least a minimum level to keep going.
We also asked Todd and Steve and Elizabeth the favorite questions, which are what's the bare minimum that you can have to make an impact, and what's priority number 1?
And the reason why we ask those questions is because we want to continue to have the good quality in each unit. That's really important aspect, that we continue to have the services, but have a good quality for all the students. Like we really look into the future and what you guys are going to fit the next year, and that's like the number 1 thing we look at, to make sure you guys have good quality of psychologists, good quality of programs, and that's why we ask what's the minimum for you guys that you guys will want or need for the programs to continue at its quality level. for that. So that's something that we'll try to review.
So do we have any questions from the crowd for the unit directors or from us in regards to where the money should be allocated to or how much? No questions?
So earlier there's a chart where had like the little oval thing, and it talked about like the fall unit visits. Why do you, as a committee, do want fall unit visits, and why are they important?
Well, I think for me at least, fall unit visits are important because it kind of plants the seed in these our heads as far as what's going to come up. So that when we do meet with them in the spring, when they propose their they propose a proposal, that we kind of already know what they're talking about, and that it's crucial for in order for them to be successful in the next term. So that's important for me, and also is to get that one-on-one talk, because when the units do come and propose to us in the spring, we don't get that one-on-one. They kind of just come to us and it's very formal. So
It also helps that the new members get familiar with the process of the units. So I don't know, all the first year SFAC members raise your hand and vote. You guys learned a little bit this year about how there's a lot of information that's thrown at you.
It definitely helped me understand what each unit goes through when they're trying to budget themselves for all of the services that they do offer. Specifically, I was part of looking at the unit visit for the international office, and I definitely didn't know all of the services that they offer because I never used those services. So being able to actually get to look at what each unit does was a lot, was helpful for me to understand where my fees are going to.
And it's also important to continue that communication between students and each unit. We really like to, I really enjoy learning about all these other services that our units provided that I wasn't necessarily, I didn't know. So that's, I guess, going back to how students can be part of SFAC. Right before, I guess we can provide like an email of when we're going to do our unit visits, and you guys can ask us particular questions. What would you like to ask recreation and athletics? What would you like to ask for us to ask OSL? So even though students won't be involved in that meeting that we have, we can continue to ask those questions. So I know that a lot of students, for example, one of the unit visits that I did was the recreation and athletics with Brenda, and a lot of students were wondering, like, why do we have to pay $25 for classes that in the past? So we did ask that question, and then once he explained it, it was just kind of like, oh, that makes sense. And it was meant to hire more students to be able to teach those classes. They didn't want to hire regular employees outside of the campus. So it was technically going back to you. And then, did you want to have a visit or? So we learned a lot about each unit and kind of what they go through and what they do with their funding. So.
Oh, man, room like okay.
Any questions, or should I just keep talking?
Actually, just as a final question, I just wanted to kind of get a grasp of to see if you guys feel like these town halls would be kind of something we should do more often, just so we could start, you guys could at least be more informed, or at least be able to like face-to-face, you know, because I know it's great to send emails back and forth, but it's great to be able to ask them in person, you know. So just, I guess, how would you guys like to see more town halls in the future, or need some sort of?
Yeah, good. We thought you just came with the cookies.
yeah. So right now, I'd just like to ask, what would you like to see from SFAC? So your feedback. If you guys have any input in regards to what we talked about tonight, we welcome that. So, especially from the people from ACCM. I know you guys have a lot of questions.
Or town halls. This was good.
This was good.
Yeah.
And feel free to write any of those things.
Yeah, any feedback in general, you can tell us that we suck and we're not spending your money correctly. So please be honest with us and tell us where you want your money to go. And like I said earlier, complain. You have a right to complain, use it, and tell us what you want.
Well, I think this is really helpful. I would recommend, well, I recommend this to ACCM all the time that they do these things, and hopefully works. I think that doing regular town halls, and if you feature departments at those town halls and said, if you want to talk to the Office of Student Life, they'll be at this town hall, so bring your questions for that office. Because there are students who aren't interested in what OSL does, but they are very interested in what the Bright Success Center does, and so you would get a different crowd, but they still get the same SBAC information every time, and that allows the department to kind of come from here.
Yeah, I would actually agree with that, because I'm sure that just people want a little more details, get down to the nitty gritty, that might really get people yelling and screaming about where the money's going. But so yeah, no, I agree, I think that'd be a great opportunity.
Okay, and I just don't think you should present town halls as a place where everyone's going to complain and attack you. You're doing fine, and there's always, outside input will only enhance things. But yeah, it doesn't have to be yelling and screaming. And
You can tell us you like us too, that's okay. I'll take
no, but to me, tied to that, I think what a town hall could do, there's this overall issue I see at UCMS all the time of students not really recognizing or embracing their power and influence in the world. And the more you all can know from these things, I think then when you understand why you do need to learn to brag. And when you're out in the community, everyone you meet, that could be that person who'd love to fund a newspaper. They'd love to do this. They've never met you. They never saw the impact it's having. You have to get out, and you're an amazing force in the world if only you would go out and use it.
And also use the services that our campus provides. Go out there, even if it's just once walking in that career services or Bright Success Center, use your services. Your money's going into these units and those services. And definitely, hopefully, that's the one thing you do learn from our town hall is that you have all these services available for you, all of you students, and you guys should go out there and explore. You'll learn a lot.
Sure. You guys have any more questions before I call the meeting? Okay, I want to thank everybody for coming. Apply to be on SBAC, even if you only have a year left, applying might be an alternate, but you still have a voice. Communicate with the committee, pester them like none other. I can say that now, I'm not going to be able to do it next year. But with that, thank you very much for coming, and feel free to email us with any more questions. And, thank you very much.
What's the website?
sfac.ucmerced.edu. You can email me directly, arlene@ucmerced.edu. I think it's the best number. And the committee's going to hang out and break this place down, so if you have questions, want to talk to us, feel free to.
Feel free to take some snacks.
Thank you to Steve and Todd and Elizabeth for taking time out of their day to do this.